Today I'm going to show you how to take a cross stitch small, like my free Cactus Ladies chart, link below, and make a fun decorative cover for a jar. Let's go over what we're going to use for today's project. We have your completed Cactus Ladies cross stitch. The link is below. This is a free chart I have on my website. Any other small cross stitch would also work, but you can grab this one for free. I've got this little plastic jar. If you buy them online, they call them food saver jars. It does have a lid. I wanted to use plastic because I'm going to be using this jar. I didn't want to use glass. You can recycle and use a clean glass jar if you want, but I didn't want to take the chance that I was going to knock it off the shelf, so I used a plastic jar. We're going to use a little bit of stitch Witchery. You'll see why. We've got our Pellon fusible interfacing, the thin kind. I'm going to use this for the back of my cross stitch piece. Optional would be some batting. If you want to place batting behind your piece, you can do that as well. I'm not going to use that today, but you can. I've got a small piece of sticky board, a piece of scrap fabric, my vintage trim, otherwise known as rickrack. You could also use yarn or string or cording, whatever you have on hand. And I have these colors of Be Cute lace. You can use ribbon. Again, look around, see what you have on hand. This is designed to be a quick and easy project. We're also going to use a glue gun and an iron. Let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and measure my piece. It is just about 2.5 inches tall. That's the measurement I'm most concerned with. I'm going to measure my jar, and my jar is about 3 inches. What I'm going to do first is take this over to the iron. I'm going to put some of this fusible interfacing on the back. I do that because I stitch on Aida 14 count. If you're stitching on a tighter weave, you probably don't need to do this, but this will give a little bit more stability to the back of my piece. This is very soft. I'm going to cover the whole piece and then just trim. Now some of this is going to probably end up being cut off, but that's okay. I'm trying to make this really easy. Sometimes you want to finish a piece and maybe come up with something practical that you can use, but you don't want to spend all day doing that. Always close your rotary blade and get that out of the way. If you've never worked with this product before, one side you can feel is kind of rough and has bumps. That's the side that's going to touch your piece, and the other side is smooth. I'm going to put it like that and take it over to the ironing board and iron it on the back of my piece. We're at the ironing board. My iron's ready to go. When you work with a product like this, you always want to use a pressing cloth if you don't have a pressing cloth handy. Scrap of fabric will work. Since my scrap of fabric doesn't cover the whole piece, I'll do this section, and then I'll move it and do this section. The instructions say to press for 10 seconds and then move on to the next section. It also says you can baste it before you iron it down. I'm not going to worry about that. I can see I'm a little bit over here. I'll have to be careful so I don't accidentally iron it to my ironing board, but if I do, that's okay. I've done that before. I do all my stuff like this with anything fusible on this side of the ironing board, so I know that if there's anything stuck on the cover, that's where it is. I'm just going to press and hold for 10 seconds and I'll do the whole piece. Let's have a look. I did stick it to my ironing board a little bit, but that's okay. We'll just peel that. Make sure it's on there. It's good. It's on there. We're going to go ahead and go back over to the cutting table. Next I'm going to work on fitting my piece to my jar. Now I already know because I played around a little bit with it. I'm going to be folding these down because my piece is bigger than the jar. There's a couple options for this. We'll go over that, but I'm going to wing it. Let's see if I get the size right. That actually looks really good. What I'm aiming for is to cover the jar. And you can see there's a gap here. We'll go ahead and we'll address that. I'm going to fold, make sure that, do I see anything along the top? I can see a little bit of that along the top. So I'm going to actually, even though this is nice and serged, I'm going to go ahead and trim this a bit because we're going to iron it on the back with the stitch Witchery. It'll be fine. I'm going to trim down a little. And since you put that iron-on product on the back, that's going to keep it from fraying. Making sure my blade's closed. That looks better. What I'm going to do now is secure these pieces down. This is the stitch Witchery. It's a fusible bonding web. It's not going to come out. What I want to do is run it along behind this piece. I'm going to go ahead, trim that. I can see it's a little too wide. I'm going to go ahead and trim the little piece off. This may be a little unconventional, but I'm all about finishing things and crafts and using what you've got laying around and having fun with it. If it's not fun, don't get stressed over your crafts. That fits. I'm going to take this over to the ironing board and press this down. This product also says 10 seconds to press and don't slide your iron around. It's under there pretty good. I'm not going to put a pressing cloth over this. This is Aida. It's really thick. Let's do 10 seconds. That's stuck down nice and tight. I could have done the bottom one first and folded the top over. I didn't do that because on the bottom I have my initials and the date that I stitched this, and this is going to go around the jar anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to cut another piece of the stitch Witchery, put it behind that, and seal that down. Everything's sealed down. We're ready to go to the next step. The next thing I want to do is make sure my space from here to this edge and here to this edge is even. You really don't have to. I just would like it to be even for visual reasons. It'll look nicer. Let's measure. Right now it's a little over 2 inches here, and I know this one's bigger, so I think I'm going to go with 2 inches. I'm going to cut that end off. And I'm going to turn and trim this to 2 inches. Okay. Now it's the same on both sides. Now I'm going to make the ends look a little bit more finished. I have this fun Be Cute lace. I've had this in a drawer for quite some time, and I don't think I've ever used it. I'm going to use 2 of the colors today. I'm going to use the red to trim up the edge like that, and I'm just going to eyeball it, make sure it covers the width of my piece, and I have a little bit over and a little bit over because I'm going to glue gun it to the back. So that looks good. And then I will cut another one the same length. You can use ribbon, cording, piece of scrap fabric, chenille, whatever you've got laying around. You could even use, the vintage trim rickrack stuff for it as well, but I'm going to use that to tie the piece. I'm going to want to glue that down. I don't want to get glue all over the table. I've got some scrap paper. I'll put that down. Got my glue gun. I keep it on a paper plate so it doesn't drip everywhere. And then I always use these so I don't burn my fingers. I'm going to run glue along the edge. Came out a little bit faster than I wanted. I'm glad I had it on the paper. Lay that down. Turn it towards me. That looks good. I'm going to watch out because I've got glue on the paper over there. Let's just turn that. And then we'll secure it to the back. And I'll do the same thing to the other side. Now we've got our decorative trim on the edges there. We're going to get ready to attach it to the jar. I know my piece is smaller than the jar, so I'm going to want a way to close this. If you want to get fancy, you can sew on some fabric, you can add Velcro. Again, I'm trying to make this sort of fun and easy. I'm going to use the vintage trim. You can see I've got a little space here. That's going to be perfect for gluing this down. I'm not sure how long I want it, so it's going to need to go here and here, and then I want to be able to tie it with the other piece. If you want, you could also do it this way. You could cut a piece, glue, and then this would just slide on and off. You could also put a button if you want to stitch down a button and stitch down an elastic or some string and loop it around the button. Those are some other ideas for you. So it's going to go underneath, and it needs to be long enough for me to tie it. That's probably long enough. It's not like I have to tie it in a fancy bow or anything. I was looking for scissors. I'll just grab my cutter. Any extra pieces I have of the trim, I'll save, because I use these sometimes decorating frames for cross stitch, and I glue it down. Shocker. There's my pieces. We're going to flip this over. Get my paper again. And I'm going to glue it on the back. It sort of has a right side and a wrong side just because of how it's wrapped around the spool. So this is the side I want facing out. So I'm going to want to glue this piece here. And I want to make sure that I glue enough down so it's nice and secure so I don't accidentally rip it off. So I'm going to measure about the middle there. Make sure this is straight here, about the middle here. There's my little pen line. Put the pen away. Make sure I have wrong side facing me so the pretty side is out. Put my glue right there. Line that up. That looks good. But before we tie this on, we're going to decorate the lid. Sticky board. Which I always have funny little extra pieces because I mount my cross stitch on sticky board. Set that there. And we're going to trace around it. I have my little circle traced. I'm going to use a rotating cutting mat, and I have this rotary cutter with, this is a less expensive blade that I buy in bulk. I use this to cut sticky things. When I do my cross stitch finishing and I'm cutting sticky board, I use this. You can even see there's kind of like sticky stuff on it. You can also use scissors. Whatever you use, it's going to get sticky on it. I really like these scissors. These are Singer scissors. They're probably not meant for cutting sticky board. I buy them online, and they're not very expensive, so I like them because I can keep them by each of my different machines. But this pair has been used to cut sticky things and, you know, things you shouldn't cut fabric scissors with, so it's the designated pair of scissors for that. We've cut all the way around our sticky board. I closed my blade. I'm going to put that away. I want to see if it's going to fit on the lid. It's still a little big. Do you see that? It kind of sits inside the groove here, but it's coming up here. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not going to retrace. I'm just going to trim some of the extra off. That looks pretty good. Got a scrap of fabric. And if you want, you could even put a cross stitch small on top. I'm going to stick it to the back of the fabric. Peel, stick. And I'm going to trim some of this excess off because what I'm going to do is go around and glue it down. And if there's too much bulk, it's not going to lie flat on my lid. We're all trimmed. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to be gluing this down. If you're somebody who likes to lace your fabric, you can certainly lace this around the back. I'm not going to do that. I want this to be, like I said before, kind of a quick and easy way to finish something. Everything's glued down. I'm going to pull some of the little glue strings off. You can sort of go like this and press it. Make sure it looks nice. Again, for me, that looks great. The idea is just to make the black plastic lid look nicer. And we're going to do something else too with this black plastic lid. Here's the top. Let's glue that down. I'm going to put the hot glue on the fabric and the board instead of directly on the plastic. This is a Sure Bonder high temp glue gun. I'm afraid it might melt the plastic if I touch this tip to it, so I'm going to give it just a second to set, but still be hot but not scorching. I'm going to press that down, and then we're going to decorate the rim of the lid. Your fabric's glued down. We're going to go ahead and decorate the rim, make it look pretty. I'm going to go back to this lace. I'm going to use the yellow, which just happens to be right about the size of the jar lid, a little bit thick, but that's okay. I trimmed off the edge so it's nice and clean. This will get glued down around the rim. It'll help camouflage the bump on that and those sort of uneven, funky edges. It just happens to be the right, it's really good. It's almost the perfect size. That looks good. I do want to overlap it just a bit. I'm going to cut it right about there. And kind of go a little bit sparingly. It just needs to be attached. Everything is glued down. Looks good. Here's the lid. If that extra bothers you, you could have cut the circle to be a little bit bigger and glued it to the outside. I wanted it on the inset. I didn't want a chance at popping off. You've got all your pieces. You've got your cross stitch piece, your decorative lid, and your jar. Let's tie our piece around our jar. You can see most of them fit, but not all of them. I'll go ahead and put these back in the original container. This is plenty for me to use. Let's put on our lid. Now you can see with this, it's kind of curving around a little bit because it's a little larger than the lid. It's alright. We'll pull it out of the way and we'll put it down and then we'll fix it if we need to. Here's my glue line. I don't necessarily want that visible, so I'm going to move that to the back. There is your beautiful cross stitch jar. Again, you can use any cross stitch small that you want. Let's go put it on the shelf. Here's my cute little jar on my shelf. It looks great. This is near my embroidery machine, and my sewing machine. So whenever I need those clips, they'll be handy. I'll have easy access to them. Thank you so much for making the little cross-stitch jar with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this was fun and easy and a great way to use up a cross-stitch small. Stay tuned for more tutorials. Be sure to like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. I'll see you next time.